I would argue it's not fair to those two entities that we've kind of set off to the side. That's just my personal opinion.
Jeannie, if I may add, with this proposal, what we're essentially saying is, in addition to the taxpayers funding the library, we also want the electric consumers to help fund the operation of the library. The tax-exempt
entities are now going to be contributing towards these services, yes, that they don't now contribute towards financially, because they don't pay taxes. But they are our biggest users of the utility. So by adjusting the rates and their volume, they'll contribute way more than they contribute now, which is zero, to help the library and the museum. Now they'll be contributing something.
Can we, unless there's any other questions, I would suggest that we just put this recommendation aside and perhaps we get Jeannie, Ray, Robert, get together and craft something that you can vote yes or no and know what you're voting on. I think that would help. And then the council's got a lot to think about in the meantime. And I guess if we're not too heavy on Monday night, add that to the agenda.
Okay. It's on the agenda already.
Okay. You knew we weren't going to get it through, Meryl. All right. Okay. A lot to think about. All right. Amend the 2009 temporary operating budget to provide funding through June 30, 2009. That's easy.
You want a motion?
Go
What do you
ahead.
need to do with it?
Move for discussion?
Good.
Move for discussion?
Second.
You just got to keep it going for another month, is what Robert's saying.
Welcome to New York State.
The resolution we adopted January 1st provides statutory funding through March 31st. There is not state law that limits the amount that we can appropriate for temporary budgets. After that, I've put in a temporary budget that should get us to June 30th, so we don't have to come back to this.
And this is being driven because you still don't have figures from the state.
Pardon me?
This is being driven because you don't have
No, I
figures
do
from
not
the state.
have, I don't have state guidelines on this. I discussed this with Dave Evans.
No, not guidelines. You don't have some of the figures.
Correct.
And I just want,
Right.
so the public understands.
Yes. Don't have a final on state aid, which is critical. Don't have a final on pensions, which is unbelievably critical.
Yeah.
And
I just don't want to make it look like, gee, we couldn't make up our minds, so can we just extend what we have?
and both of them impact the inside cap spending as well as the tax levy cap. Two critical pieces.
Is there a resolution number so we can move the resolution?
It's listed for the regular meeting on the 23rd.
Okay, so we're not looking to
Right.
do this tonight?
No.
We have until March 31st to do it, so we can do it Monday.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
got it. Okay, thank you.
No further questions on that? The Environmental Infrastructure Financing Program.
Yes, Ray and I met with representatives from Chatham as well as our bond counsel, and like any document that I'm going to send on behalf of the borough of Madison, I want your approval to send to the Environmental Infrastructure Financing Program, an addendum that authorizes our entering into a financing program. Our piece would be, the total amount is $3.3 million for, you can see the attachment, what it would be for primary digester number 1, cleaning of the digester, and several other projects. Our piece would be $2,162,000 that would be bonded. And I'd like your approval to move that.
I want to make sure that I understand what we're committing ourselves to. Are we agreeing to bond the $2 million, or are we agreeing to something else? What are we agreeing to?
We're agreeing to proceed with an application for financing for projects. The joint meeting collectively would agree on the authorizing the issuance of bonds and approving the bond sale.
Let's go back a little bit and make sure everybody understands what's going on here. Because I don't want people to leave the room tonight with the idea that we just committed ourselves to another, what was your number, 2-1?
2.1.
2-1 of debt service. I think people need to understand that, and I think this is where Jeannie was going, and she was probably a little more polite than I'll be. We had the conversations down at the joint meeting about monies that are available under the stimulus package, right? This is what this whole project is about. Shovel-ready projects where funding, alternative funding sources may be available, including no interest money, low interest money, and grants. To be eligible for those funding sources, we need to move forward with this process and a commitment to the project as an application to the state fund that will be dispersing these dollars. There would be at least 2 more steps before we committed to taking to the project and committing to the debt. And I think it's safe to say that we who meet that every third Monday to talk about all things sewer have been very vocal in reserving our right to decide whether we proceed with these projects once we better understand what our funding sources are. So this is nothing more than a preliminary step that would allow us to make application for dollars that would be available under the stimulus package at little or no cost to the taxpayers for projects that we at the joint meeting had already identified as essential projects that we would have to address in the relatively near future, but do not think that this is a commitment to issue another $2.16 million in bonds. And I don't think it was a question.
That was good. Good
Good,
explanation.
very clear.
See, I do pay attention.
That was good.
I know you guys are all
I
suspicious.
love those meetings. All right,
Right.
so would we authorize, this will be on the consent agenda for
Yes,
Monday.
Monday.
But would we to authorize Robert to sign the grant, prepare the grant, the application?
Correct.
Okay, capital budget discussions continue. Civic Center elevator.
Okay, you know, could I talk about that a little bit first?
absolutely.
Okay. I spoke with Edna Arley-Byrne of the director of the senior center, and I said to her how difficult and how scarce money is this year, that a grant has been proposed for $80,000. I was wondering if we could reach some compromise, if the borough could commit to $170,000 and the $80,000 would either be made up by getting a grant or fundraising. And we also talked about how it's not just the seniors that need this elevator, but it's people who frequent the health department. Now, if it's people who are using the health department from other towns that we contract with, well, one would think that the contracts should reflect, that we need to put this in and make a building handicap accessible.